Hey guys, I'm Mark.
I'm Alen.
And welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up.
So catchy.
Hey man, you like that tune, don't you?
Yeah, man, I dig it.
It was a good find.
Yeah, I think you picked that, right?
Yeah, but you sent me down the path of let's do something in the funk variety.
Oh yeah, that's
which
right.
I'm telling you, man,
right.
it never would have crossed my mind to do funk. I didn't even know really what that genre sounded like till you put me down that path.
Well, that's definitely down that road, and I feel it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mark.
I like it. It was a good choice.
What's up, man?
Oh, little this, little that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that in this as well.
Yeah.
It's been wild, man. Since the last time we talked, I feel like I lived like a lifetime or something. It's just life keeps spinning.
The summer is busy for you.
Yes, it is.
For sure.
Yes, it is. Traveling and such. I taught a hip hop camp.
Yeah?
Yeah. That I don't normally do that, but I did that. And my body is screaming again. You are not 18. Stop it. Just stop it.
The mind may say yes.
Yes. But the body is like,
right.
Wow.
Right.
Hang it up.
Actually, I knew you taught that hip hop camp.
That's right.
And everything that I've heard is 2 thumbs up.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I've heard it was really, really good. In fact, I saw some of the evidence of that too. But
yeah, that's right. You were
those boys had a good time.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun with all those kids. Yeah, I'm still sore. I'm sorry, man. What about you, man? What you been up to?
Oh, nothing too big. Just, by the time this episode airs, my oldest will be at school and we'll have gone through that launch. And
yeah, man.
Yeah.
How you feeling, man?
I'm good. Yeah. I'm ready. He's ready.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, the trip home, that's what I'm not looking forward to.
Bro.
I think the floodgates are going to open on the way home.
I'm thinking so too.
Yeah.
If you need a shoulder, man, and a cup of coffee, come get me with the cup of coffee.
Okay. I may have to take you up on that.
It's serious, man.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's just change.
Yeah.
In fact, he wrote a song recently titled Change, where he talks about being in a new town in a couple weeks and all by himself, and it's going to be different. He's a very creative and musical kid, and so it's just how he's expressing through his emotions.
Yeah.
And, man, it brought me and the wife to tears
man.
listening to it.
Man, kids can do that to you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Especially an artiste.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
It is cool.
All right.
It's cool. More to come on that.
Absolutely. We'll get into that later.
I'll have to bring our listeners up to speed after the fact when I can talk with clarity and certainty about how much of a crybaby I was on the way home.
Dropping tears. It's okay, man.
I know it's okay.
It's okay.
It's a little unusual for me, but I'm okay with that.
All right.
I'm man enough. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good. I see what you did there.
Yeah. It kind of flows, right?
Yeah, I get it.
So we probably ought to let our listeners in on what's happening today.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's talk to them.
So we are in a different location. We're actually recording remote, live on scene, and this is going to be our first opportunity to have a guest on the show. And man, I'm excited about this. Just taking the podcast to a place where we can invite other voices real time into the conversation.
Sure.
And just experiencing a bigger conversation. I'm excited about what we're going to get into today. And so this is kind of a first for us.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah, so without further ado, let me bring David Milroy into the conversation. We are live in New Albany, Ohio, on site at the New Albany Presbyterian Church, and I am so honored, David, to have you part of this conversation. And so just a little bit of a background here. David and I met a few months ago because through a mutual friend, I heard about a program that he started here at the church. And I'm like, boy, I haven't heard too many programs like this. Let's have a conversation. I'll tell you my story. He can tell me his. And that led to this interview today, or really just a conversation. I guess we shouldn't make it so formal. And so, David, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you both. It's great to be on with you, Mark and Alen, and I guess I'm just disappointed that Mark wasn't part of your hip-hop camp, Alen, because I am sure he could have used it.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but, Mark's kind of like a Yoda of breaking. He's got kids levitating as their head spinning. So I didn't think the guys were ready for that yet.
That's not part of the camp yet.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the same Mark, or did...
Just messing.
No, I am smart enough to not get on a dance floor. I can tell you that. My body's not in any shape, nor is my mind in any shape to do that. So it was a good thing I was not there.
But it's great to be with you.
Yeah,
welcome,
thank you.
man.
Thank you so much. So when you and I first met, I was really drawn to the little bit of the story that you were able to share with me, and your heart toward raising up boys to become men. And it was really that kind of drew us together. But I thought maybe we could start with you just tell us a little bit about yourself, bring our listeners into your story, who you are, what you're doing here, and we'll just kind of see where it goes from there.
Sure. I am the pastor of New Albany Presbyterian Church, and I have been for just a little over 14 years. And I am married to my lovely wife, Leah. We've been married for 21 years this Thursday.
Nice.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have 4 children. My oldest, Hunter, is 18. And then I have 3 daughters, Isabella, Catherine, and Annie. And they are 15, 12, and 9. And so this church was sort of a new start / restart back in 2004. That's when we arrived in New Albany. And we've been at it ever since.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
So tell us a little bit about. I heard a guy by the name of Norm Wakefield. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that name or not. I heard him speak a few months ago, and he's like, you can almost always tell the quality of a man by the quality of his father, or his relationship with his father. So take us back into your childhood, your journey. Tell us about your father and about your relationship with him.
Well, I grew up in Worthington, so not far from here. And my dad is a wonderful man. He was the most significant male role model in my life.
Yeah.
And he led mostly by example, and still does. A couple things about him. One, he always worked very hard in his job, and he modeled hard work, and that really influenced me, had a huge impact on me, watching him not only work hard in his job, but at home as well. And so he led by example in the sense that he modeled the behavior that he wanted me and my younger brother and sister to practice.
Yeah.
And so we had a great relationship. He worked long hours. He traveled some. But I never felt like he wasn't around. I never felt like he neglected us. He just, that was very important to him.
Yeah.
And so great work ethic. We had a lot of fun together. He's a funny guy, and he has a great sense of humor, and he loves to compete, play games. So, grew up with that kind of fun-loving environment, and he really taught me how to be a man. Now, that said, there were things that he was pretty hands-off on as well. There are areas of my life that we did not talk about, that we... whether, I don't know why, probably because some aspects of growing into a man are awkward to talk about. And so we just didn't really cover some topics. We didn't go too deeply into faith, although we went to church every Sunday. It was not a conversation that we had regularly. And so it was not, there was not a a deep spiritual relationship then, although there is now, today.
Okay.
But he really led by example. He worked hard. He loved my mom. He loved us, and was at almost all my games. He never. He was very supportive. He did not put a ton of pressure on me to perform, whether it was on the basketball court or in school. I mean, I did okay, fine in school, but he would, whenever I brought a grade, card home, he would always say, "Well, you did a lot better than I did, son." So he just really wasn't that passionate about me, knocking it out of the park. Not that he didn't want me to work hard. He did, and he demonstrated that, and he also encouraged me to do that. But I never felt this pressure like his identity was riding on how well I did in sports or school or
That's
whatever.
a common challenge with parents. I know you've seen it. I've seen it. Alon's seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are all things that it just seemed normal to me because that was what I knew, and it probably wasn't normal.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't the norm. So I love my dad so much. I'm grateful for him. He's still a big part of my life. He's part of our church, so we see each other regularly, and he's very involved in my kids' lives as well.
That's cool.
And it's a huge blessing.
That's awesome.
You said something that kind of struck me. Alon and I won't recount our stories here because we've done that. But both of our stories got to a point where we realized there was something in our upbringing, our background that was missing. And for us, it was this idea of, boy, have I made it to manhood yet? Have I crossed that threshold? And it was looking back in my own life that I realized I had, much like you, I had a fantastic upbringing, but there was something missing, or there were things that I wanted to do different in my own life, not as a criticism necessarily to my dad. It's just like, oh, I see things from a different perspective. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do things a little bit different. Like I want an initiation into manhood for my kids. I didn't get that, and it left a hole. And I wanted to provide that for my kids. What triggered that thought is you said something about, there were things that you were missing, or there were even places that you didn't go in conversation. What was your journey to manhood like?
Well, one more thing I want to say about my dad before I get to that. One of the greatest things he did for me was model being a good husband. He and my mom have a great relationship, and he was always, he respected her. They loved each other. They had a lot of fun together, and so we never really talked about, for instance, when you get married, you should do X, Y, and Z. But it was modeled, so it was incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of coming, like the path to manhood, I know that one of the main themes for your work in this podcast is talking about initiation, and in our culture, there's no real clear overt path to when someone becomes a man.
Right.
And I would say that for me, one of the most important aspects of when I knew I was a man had to do with not only in seeing my dad and what he modeled, but the Christian community that I was a part of. Because in high school, I had a very clear conversion to Christ through the ministry of Young Life. And then in college, I was discipled through a ministry called Crew and campus ministry. So that was very critical for me, although there was still no, these are the things you need to do in order to become a man. But it was, I guess it became, probably because of my understanding of the Bible, my understanding of what God wanted of me, required of me, and the model of other people who discipled me, like I knew that when I got to a certain point, and that point, and it wasn't overt, it was just kind of assumed, like when I get married and when I start paying the bills, that's when I've become a man. I mean, I turned 21, and really, like I turned 18, I turned 21, nothing really changed. I was still very heavily supported by my parents, and my my education.
You mean when I take my kid to school here soon?
I'm pretty sure that will not end unless he hits it big time right away. And that song you were talking about,
can you hear the bubbles bursting?
Goes double platinum.
I'm joking.
But I got, because of the culture I was in and this was not due to my parents. This was due to this Christian community that I was a part of. There were guys dating girls who were seriously considering marriage very early, much earlier than, like I was also part of a fraternity that was not a Christian fraternity. It was about as far from being a Christian fraternity as possible. And these guys were on a little bit of a different trajectory. They were not thinking about getting married. So the subculture I was a part of, it was normal to do that. And so I had been dating Leah for a number of years, and we were both ready. And so we got married, and I got a job. I got a job first, then we got married. And that ushered in a new time in my life. It wasn't like there was a big ceremony, but I knew, okay, this is different than being a college kid with an hour of class and the rest of the day doing whatever I want to do.
Yep. Okay. Well, you had seen your dad live it out, right?
That's right.
You knew what marriage was.
That's
because
right. And
you grew up with it.
I also think it's a little bit of a generational change, because that was for the generation that preceded me, my dad. That was what most of them did. I mean, they went to college, then they got married, and then they started life.
There wasn't a prolonged adolescence.
There was no prolonged adolescence to the late 20s, and that was starting to happen. I'm 44. That was starting to happen. It feels like it's much more pronounced now with my children. They will have decisions to make that will be where, if they choose to, take on responsibility in the way that I hope they will, that'll happen against the stream. I mean, against the grain of what, I don't know, I think typical 21st century American culture is.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we wrestle with is this idea of masculinity or manhood or manliness. I'm curious. We can, Alen, we got to get you into this conversation too.
I like hearing people.
I know
stories,
you like
so
stories.
This is good.
You
this
like
is good.
stories. But give me your reaction to the word manliness or masculinity. Like what things, I'm going to leave this as open as possible. What things come to mind when you start to think about those words and what they mean?
Probably the number one word that comes to my mind is strength. Is a sense of strength and the capacity to take care of oneself and the people that you love, that you're responsible for, and to do that in a way that is humble and gentle, not weak, though, strong. And I think that is something, that definition is very different than what I think media, pop culture commonly understood as masculinity or manliness. I think a lot of times it's caricatured, and I think a lot of times it is either downplayed or attacked. that I think masculinity sometimes is equated with dominance or
power,
aggression that
right.
is inappropriate and that oppresses or demeans specifically women. I mean, I think that there's a tension in our culture between like what does it mean to be masculine? I see an erasing of differences between male and female, or at least an attempt to do that I don't think it works.
Yeah.
So, but I think part of the reason is because masculinity has been it's been caricatured or it's been reduced to several markers in our culture that define, I don't know, status, like how many women you hook up with, or how much money you make,
right, right,
or how good you are at sports, and it's not that those like success is not a bad thing, and maybe part of masculinity is knowing a craft or whatever it is that you do and doing it with excellence and getting better and better at it. And if you do that, you probably will be rewarded with, being acknowledged and making more money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that the parody of masculinity is a guy who is really good looking and works out a lot and women love him and he's rich and he drives a really cool car. I mean, that's probably the parody. So that's not, I don't think that's true masculinity, although there could be overlap. Could someone be a strong, gentle, responsible guy who happens to be wealthy and drive a nice car and take care of his family and yes, absolutely. But those other things that I described at the beginning of this long explanation of gentleness and strength, and responsibility, those are often not part of the overall definition of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
Part of the equation.
Yeah, that's very consistent with much of what we've been saying in this space, in this conversation, is that we have reduced masculinity, manliness to, I like the way you put it, to a parody or a caricature. And there are elements there that we certainly resonate with, and I think strike at the heart of what it means to be male, just how we're wired as gender. But they don't go far enough. They don't go deep enough to really get to what masculine really means, and to reduce it to what you've accumulated, or your female exploits, or your career position. Whatever, to reduce it to, it's just settling. It's settling for something less than what's been intended, is my opinion anyway. Yeah. And I think part of what we also see with the reaction, the cultural reaction, specifically like the Me Too movement, is a pushback to say that we don't want that.
Right.
We don't want that. But
and you see that in what's the name of the guy who the whole Me Too movement started with
Weinstein?
Yes, with Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And that was a parody of masculinity.
Yeah.
This kind of domineering, powerful, abusive man who used his position and his power to just take complete advantage and
evil.
Yeah, for wickedness. Yeah. And so when you see that being put forth as, well, if that's masculinity, I don't want anything to do with that. That is in itself wicked. And so I think that I do think that that runs the risk of eliminating male-female differences altogether, which is not a good thing either.
Right. It's like the pendulum swings too far. The old statement, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yep. We throw all the men out with Weinstein because they're lousy, they're good for nothing. Right. All men behave this way. And I think that's, at least in part, that's what we're trying to rail against. Like,
Absolutely.
no, not all men behave this way. Certainly there are some. Unfortunately, there are too many, but not all, and that's not the ideal. The ideal is something way bigger, something way deeper, and something that demands more strength, more courage, more power in terms of surrender and being humble and being open and vulnerable. That type of strength and power, that's way more power and influential than just somebody who has positional authority or is very strong, physically very strong.
Very womanizing.
Yeah. I in some preparation for this, I actually Googled David Milroy. Do you know there's a Milroy in Australia that's written books?
No,
I assume
did
that's not you.
That is not me.
Okay, all right. Well, good. We're on the same page.
I'm not even going to attempt
Yeah, we need
an
to clarify
Australian
that.
accent.
We won't put you on the spot for that. That could go horribly wrong. But I did listen to a couple of your messages just to kind of hear what you were about, and I noticed a theme over the last few months of taking example from the man Jesus. And I wonder, in the context of what we're talking about here, masculinity, manhood, like a truer definition of man, what do you find in the life of Jesus that speaks into this conversation that we're having?
Well, I think the most important feature or aspect of Jesus' character that is, we talked about Harvey Weinstein, and he was no longer is a powerful man. He's been completely outcasted, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But he used his power to fulfill his own selfish and wicked desires. Jesus, more powerful than anyone who has ever lived. And so we're going, as a church, we're going through the gospel according to John, and we're just going through it verse by verse from beginning to end. And we're in John chapter 6, where Jesus fed 5,000 people, where he walked on water. He can do things that no one else can. He is the most powerful person who ever lived, and of anyone far more deserving to have things go his way, to get whatever he wants. So I think what we learn about masculinity from Jesus is power that's subordinated to love and to service of others, so that his power was used in order to bless other people, and ultimately, of course, to lay his life down,
right,
to so that we could be reconciled to God, so that our sin could be forgiven. So we see this great example of power, but power that is used in a way that is for the benefit of to serve other people. And he says that over and over again, that when two of his disciples come and say, we want to sit on your right hand, your left hand, he says to James and John that that's how the Gentiles work. The Gentiles lord it over them. Mm-hmm. It will not be so with you. The greatest among you must be your servant. And so that model, and I actually think that model has, even for those who I think in many ways live in a post-Christian culture, meaning that a lot of people do not go to church, don't believe in Christ, and yet this ethic of, I don't know, the Sermon on the Mount, or love your neighbor as yourself, that resonates in our culture.
Right.
Why does that resonate? Because Jesus overturned what it means to be a man. And so, not that is what I still think it's missing largely, when we talk about manhood. But I would say that's the biggest thing that, there's so many things that, Jesus, he's our model in every way, but he was so powerful, and all of that power was subordinated to serving other people.
Don't you think that if men, like even just the three of us in the room, if we were to go out and live that way, we lived in love and we subordinated ourselves to the service and the benefit of others, like the world would be totally different. It would be such a different place.
Yeah, it'd be truly different. I like that you started with, I think your first definition was that, explanation was that Jesus' power was subordinate to love. And just thinking of who God is, it's just not something he does. He is love.
Yes.
And that it just permeates like from him. You know what I mean? It just oozes from him. And that even like his strength, his power, everything was still subject to what his love wanted to happen.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And I think what we often get wrong is the idea of love as passive affirmation.
Yeah.
That's not love. No. Love is active, serving, laying down one's life for the other. And I think it's important to note that Jesus was not, like, you don't mess with him. You didn't.
Nah, he was flipping
he's not
tables,
to be
bro.
trifled with. Yeah, he was flipping tables. It's not like he was a weak, passive man. He was strong. He didn't suffer fools lightly. He was clear on his mission. He was not afraid to tell people that they were wrong. He had confrontation over and over again, all out of a desire to love and to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And those are hard to, I mean, we fall woefully short. We all do. And so we'll get that wrong. We won't always balance love and truth, or strength and service. That's okay though. I mean, because we're all trying to become the people that we're supposed to be.
Right.
But I think that's how Jesus, like, if there's an archetype of the greatest, I mean, obviously he is the greatest human who ever lived, and for our culture, he's the archetype of the ideal human, but also as the ideal man. Yeah. He was very strong, yet he was very humble. Mm-hmm. He was not to be messed with. Like, you didn't walk up to him and he wasn't like a grandfather who just said, yes, I love you, and I'm going to affirm who you are. And like sometimes love is described in that way. It's not that. Love looks out for the individual, but it also confronts the individual. And I think going back to what this is all about with our sons, we want to love them. We want to, like my dad, I don't want to find my identity in how my kids are doing in their grade point or whether they're good at sports or whatever. But I don't want to, I want to train them and shepherd them and discipline them so that they can go out into the world and tackle the world with the gifts they've been given in the way that they're called to do. Yeah, I mean, want them to be strong, and want them. You can't protect them. Don't want to, I want them to be ready to go out in the world and make an impact. So.
Well, thanks for listening to this interview with David Milroy. Alen and I had such a great time in this conversation, listening to his story and the things that he's got going on. And we continued recording, but we're going to break this interview up into 2 episodes. So we'll conclude this episode here. And with the next episode, we'll transition into the program that they've implemented at their church. And we'll also introduce another guest into this dialogue. So stay with us, and we'll see you next time. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.